Imagine that, your flight book and you show up at the airport, Norman Manley International Airport, and they confiscate your passport and send you back home. And 25 years later is when he got back into the UK. Alright, welcome back to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It's your host with the most. So, the story, I did a story recently now about the whole Windrush scandal, and it was a feel-good story because we got to see one individual actually return to the UK after deported to Jamaica, or after his passport was confiscated, after he visited Jamaica for a funeral and was trying to fly back into the UK. Well, he's now back in the UK, but there are others that are in Jamaica still and they're stuck. No help is coming for them, or so it seems, right? The headline of this one says, "My life is in ruins. Wrongly deported Windrush people facing fresh indignity." Now, as this story starts out, it starts out with a picture of a man, David Jamison, who is homeless on the streets of Kingston, Jamaica. And it's pretty rough for him. So, the story goes like this. It says, every week for the past 4 months, officials at the fortress-like British Commission in Kingston have been comparing lists of names of potential Windrush victims with lists held by staff a mile away at the Jamaican Foreign Ministry. Finally, their lists match the officials are working on the case of 13 people whom the British government believes that it wrongly deported to Jamaica. 8 of them have been contacted. 2 remain untraced as yet, and 3 are believed to have died before the officials were able to reverse the wrongful removals. Must they now pay restitution to that family? Let's continue. Officials are also dealing with a bigger group of Windrush people who found themselves stuck in the Caribbean after traveling there for like funerals or holidays and were refused re-entry back into the UK. Some have been issued with documents allowing them to travel back on returning residence visas. But there is a third and possibly much larger category of people that the government no longer wants to highlight. Those who were wrongly deported after committing a criminal offense. People are going to scratch them head now and say, well, you commit a criminal offense and then fling you out of them country, so what? What are you mad at? Well, you can look at it like they were British citizens. So, anyways, let's not get into that yet. I mean, man, a SouFLo, man, come make we reason with intelligence.
Hunger vlogger, we can play this. Whoa, 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 SouFLo. SouFLo, me shock you right. Set that beat, father. Set that beat, yeah. Hey, SouFLo, your king turn up loud, you don't know what. Hey, SouFLo.
SouFLo, turn up the thing.
I we say productivity and progress, you know. Up. Alright, welcome to SouFLoTV again, everybody. It's your host with the most. David Jamison believes he may be in that category. He is currently sleeping rough in Kingston. He's waiting for the error to be rectified. It may take longer for officials to focus on his case because before he was deported, he was convicted of a relatively minor offense related to the London riots and sentenced to 14 months in prison. 14 months in prison for a minor offense. What was that offense? I would like to know. In his initial acknowledgement of wrongful deportation, Sajid Javid said that 63 members of the Windrush generation could have been wrongfully removed, 32 of whom were labeled foreign national offenders. In his subsequent update on the number of wrongfully deported people, the UK Home Secretary said that after a new analysis of files, that the number of people who had been mistakenly removed from the UK had gone up to 83. From 63 to 83, you know. But he said he was no longer including foreign national offenders in the count, and he was making a purposeful distinction between criminal and other cases. Once people with convictions are included, the total number of wrongful deportation is likely to be much larger, he said. Jamison, the one who's deported, his real name, whose real name is being withheld because of his embarrassment about his criminal conviction. He was deported on the 5th of June 2013 because he had tried to kill himself twice in the detention center while he awaited deportation. He was accompanied on the British Airways flight by 2 medical assistants and 2 guards. He was handcuffed at all times. I was very calm because this is what the medication does, but I was also really scared, he says. He was driven straight from the airport in Jamaica to a mental health facility and left right there. Wow. So this man is suicidal, has serious mental issues, and they handcuffed him and dropped him off in Jamaica at a mental institution and left him right there. After a lifetime out of the country, he had no ties to Jamaica. As a child in the UK, he remembers being abused in the streets. I was called Black Monkey. Asked if I came on the banana boat and told to go back home, he says. Back in Jamaica, he is seen as an alien. I've been called names, deportee, foreigner. I've been threatened. I often feel frightened, he said. Very frightened. It's crazy. For a while, he has been staying in a derelict, roofless Police Federation building in downtown Kingston, sleeping on a bit of cardboard next to piles of rubbles, broken glass and rotten rafters. I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. I don't have a stable meal. I sleep in very disgusting places, old buildings, abandoned shops and houses. He described Kingston as a very scary and violent place and says that he witnessed a number of murders while living on the streets. They have deported me to a place which is definitely a war zone. Since being deported, he has lost his flat in London and the contents have been thrown away. He kept all his home office information in a black plastic bag which he carries with him at all times. He's struggling to regain contact with his girlfriend and 2 teenage stepdaughters who had him as their father figure for 9 years. He tries to speak to them a couple of times a week. I miss them. I keep up with their news. Well, boy, I was going to say something, but I won't. I'm sure that the woman now wait for him. Jamison, 58, says he was brought to London when he was 6 in 1966 by his grandmother, traveling on her passport because his mother in Jamaica was unable to look after him. He says that he realized at about the age of 8 that his grandmother was an alcoholic and was also unable to care for him properly. He had an unhappy and chaotic childhood. When his grandmother died, the contents of her flat were thrown away, and as a result, Jamison says he has been unable to supply any evidence of having lived in the UK since before 1973, during the period when Caribbean immigrants had the right to travel and arrive without a visa and attain indefinite leave to remain in the UK. For a long time, he was employed informally because he had no papers. He says that he helped stall owners in Brixton Market, worked on demolition sites stacking bricks for resale, and worked in Paddington Station on night shifts cleaning toilets. When he was issued with the temporary national insurance number, he worked with Wilmot Dixon on building projects in Canary Wharf. After about 10 years with the firm, he was sacked because he was unable to provide the right documents to get a permanent NI card. A couple of times he tried to resolve his immigration status, but he was unable to afford the fees that were quoted by lawyers. In Handsworth Detention Center, he told officials that he had been in the UK for 46 years, and they asked for proof. From inside the Immigration Removal Center, he was unable to gather any evidence of long-term residency in the UK. except for a letter from a Brixton community leader saying he had known him as a talented and helpful member of a youth club in 1985. This was simply not enough. Despite Javid's remarks about people being with their convictions, there appears to have been some recognition already that a mistake may have been made in Jamison's case. He had a phone call from someone at the Windrush task force 10 days ago asking him where he would stay in the UK and if he had enough money for a fare to come back. She was very nice. She kept using the term, "there is light at the end of the tunnel," he says. But he has heard nothing since, and he's uncertain about whether he will be given permission to return. "It is extremely painful. My life is in ruins. I am on the edge. Sometimes I want to go down to the sea and jump in and just never come out." The decision to exclude people who have committed offenses from active assistance has been controversial. Celia Clark, director of the charity Bail for Immigration Detainees, which advised Jamison while he was in detention, said, "It is completely unjust that the Home Office should differentiate between long-term British residents with criminal records and those without. If they have spent their childhood and subsequent years in the UK, then they are British, whether or not they have the requisite pieces of paper to prove so." Jamison said that while he was in detention, it is completely unjust that the Home Office is treating him this way. If they have spent their childhood here, then a piece of paper should not be the deciding factor. It is completely unacceptable, disproportionate, and unspeakably cruel to send people into what amounts to permanent exile to satisfy some perceived need to be tough on immigration and crime. Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, said the individual that this government has deported to the Caribbean are first and foremost British citizens, and as a country we do not deport our citizens. We must have full transparency about the scale of the Windrush scandal, and the government must not attempt to cover up the total number of fellow citizens who have been deported, detained, and denied their rights. A Home Office spokesperson said that we do not routinely comment on individual cases. The department said it was the Home Secretary's duty to protect the public. Of people who were wrongfully refused re-entry to the UK after a visit to Jamaica, some have already successfully made contact with the task force and have been issued with visas to return. Desmond Johnson, 59, who arrived in the UK at 11 years old and worked in construction in London until he returned to Jamaica to his mother's funeral and then his father's funeral, to support his mother at his father's funeral, had no desire to go back permanently to the UK because he has made Jamaica his home. However, he is delighted that he will now be able to visit his children whom he has not seen in 16 years, and he is relieved to know that he will be able to go back if anyone in his family becomes unwell. "I'm happy that the visa has been granted. I don't want to live there. I just want to go see my children," he said. "Life is good for me in Jamaica." Ken Morgan, which is another one, and that is the one that I actually recently did the video on. So if you want to see that, go ahead and watch that video. That's it now, bother me. I saw. Work with it, work with what you got, work with what you got. When the Windrush scandal broke, alright, so there are some that have been granted, right? So all over Kingston, anger about the British government treatment of some long-term residents has not abated. Herbie Miller, director of the Jamaica Music Museum, gave a furious interview at the entrance to a Jamaican 90s-40s music event near the seafront. So many of us are aware that our parents' generation migrated to the so-called mother country as colonial subjects. Many fought in 2 world wars for the mother country, and then following the devastation in Britain, they were allowed to go back to rebuild Britain. To see how the British government treated people who grew up in England, who came home for a funeral or a vacation or a wedding, and were suddenly told, you are an illegal immigrant. It hurts. These people worked in your hospitals, your transport system. They took low-paid, menial jobs, he said. It hurts because these people spent their life there. They went as little kids. And when they are put through this anguish, wow. Britain should be ashamed of itself. Bert Samuels, a barrister who sits on the National Council of Reparations, campaigning for the UK government to pay compensation to the descendants of slaves in Jamaica, says that the Windrush scandal is closely connected to the call for reparations for the slave trade. Ross, Bert Samuels is a Shanstorm lawyer, you know. Me and go hope they know. Anyway, read on. The legacy of slavery is why we are so impoverished and why so many of us have had to leave Jamaica for greener pastures to send remittance home. He says, we were British subjects until 1962. We fought in 2 world wars. We sent our soldiers who shed their bloods for Britain. Then all of a sudden it became a policy that we had to apply for a visa to go to a country that used us for 3 centuries. We felt discarded. It is widely accepted in Jamaica that Britain has used us and has refused us. Now, here's what I want you to do. You see that last part there? Britain has used us and then refused us. Leave your comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about that one. Do you think that that is the case? And also, again, if you know anybody that is in this whole Windrush scandal thing, caught up and looking to make a way back to Europe, talk about them in the comment section and let us know that it's real. Share your stories here. Alright? There's nothing much I can do to help except for create a platform for this to be heard, for the world to know about these atrocities that are going on. I will save my personal opinion for the comment section and I'll meet you there. It's SouFLoTV, man. I'm up out of here. Peace.